Welcome to Manavavani, the voice of humanism. I am Babu Gogineni and I am leading the discussion with the celebrity chef Auditya Gunti, a head chef of a six-star restaurant in Perth, Australia. The last five episodes, we have looked and surveyed food, its past, its present, and how it is viewed and consumed around the world. Today, I want to get into the technical aspects of food. Aditya, welcome to the show.
Hello, sir. Thanks for inviting me and having me for the next for the.
I I really want to understand how you handle food at your end. I have repeatedly said, with some surprise, that a small team of people in your restaurant are serving 4,000 meals a day. That's a lot of food. You say there are 250 different types of dishes you cook up every day. That's a lot of variety of ingredients and stuff that you have to put into those. How do you handle this? This is on an industrial scale.
Yes,
Already, those of us living at home have a problem understanding what to put in the refrigerator and what not, and making sure the food doesn't get spoiled. What do you guys do?
thanks for having me on the show, sir. Glad to make this episode. Uh,
Sure.
um in the industrial scale, that the volumes of food that we make and the number of people that consume the food, it makes us very critical for us to keep the food safe for everyone to consume. So the food safety here is a scientific genre describing how to handle the food, how to prepare, how to store the food so that we can prevent the foodborne illness completely or at least minimize it. For this, there is a process called as hazard analysis critical control point. It's called HACCP. It's a systematic preventive approach for this food safety from biological like bacteria and virus and chemical like any chemicals and physical hazard like pins, papers, plastics, anything like that of physical. And more recently, a radiological hazards also been introduced. So these are the measures that are put into place to reduce this risk and then to avoid any of these hazards. Let's talk about few things that are involved in the food safety. The small team that you mentioned in my restaurant is about 50 people of chefs and roughly 15 people who involved in washing and cleaning of the kitchen and dishwashing and pot washing. And there are other departments behind the kitchen who helps us to to regulate this process, to have this process in place. Like we have an in-house microbiologist sometimes, or we have an in-house food safety person. Uh, we have a F&B department who looks into all these things. We have controllers who also checks. We maintain our temperature records of fridge, freezers, walk-ins. We maintain temperatures of our cookings, what we do, what temperature we cook, how long the food has been cooked, or how old is the food, for how extent can this food be used, what is the manufacturing date of the food, and let's say you're using a bottle of ghee. So after the bottle is open, you have to make sure that there is a label on it saying that which date is the ghee opened and what is the expiry date of the ghee. So all these processes are kept in place to really minimize or completely eliminate any of these hazards at all. Um, to speak about temperatures, many of the people who work at house really don't have much knowledge about food safety. To have food in the fridge, like let's say vegetables or your dairy products, it should be 0 to 5 degrees Celsius. And you have to freeze something, it has to be below minus 18 degrees Celsius. And if you have to cook any food, it has to be cooked above 72 degrees centigrade. And if you have to store the food warm, let's say on buffets or in a food courts, it has to be stored or it has to be kept above 62 degrees centigrade. These temperatures are very critical because these are directly related with the bacteria incubation. At below minus 18 degrees centigrade, the bacteria is almost inactive, and above 72 degrees centigrade, the bacteria cannot survive. So there is a zone between 5 degrees centigrade to a 62 degrees centigrade. This um, length of temperature, the this what do you call this range of
This
temperature.
range.
Yeah, the range of temperature is called as danger zone because this is the temperature that bacteria incubation will be the fastest. So in any time we cook any food, we definitely make sure that it is above 72 degrees centigrade, and if you are storing it is below 5 degrees centigrade. And let's say if we are making something and we have to cool down it, we have blast freezers. So these are the big freezers where we can put big pots and pans inside the freezers, and there are big blowers inside it, which brings the temperature of the bulk food to the required temperature under the danger zone in a very short period of time, which means the food is staying in the danger zone for a very less period of time, and hence we are eliminating the bacterial growth over there. So this is how the temperatures are maintained, uh, and then whatever food that we make, whatever food is going for the consumption of people, we make sure that there are samples taken out of it. All these samples for every meal are kept in a freezer, and if there are any disputes, this goes for checking as well in the labs. Um,
So actually, you have almost a laboratory-like setup then.
yes,
You
sir.
have a microbiologist, you have monitoring of temperatures, you record them, and then you keep samples also, you are saying.
Yes. This
And we never know or figure this out when we go to a restaurant. So behind the doors in the kitchen, a lot more than simply cooking is happening. You are handling the material according to certain guidelines, which you said are HACCP, you said?
yes, HACCP, HACCP.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where the HACCP has started, sir?
You must tell us.
Okay. The HACCP has brought into existence by NASA. There are many stupid conclusions. People say that NASA have said a lot of things about Indian culture and Indian Vedas. This is all nonsense. But the real thing what NASA has given to us is beyond those. One of them is the HACCP. So this was first started by NASA so that any hazards that can lead to foodborne illness to the astronauts can be eliminated. So this goes from farm to fork, how the food is produced, how the food is cooked, how the food is stored, how is it transported, how is it packed. Uh, so this was made for NASA by Pillsbury Company in 1960s, so that the astronauts over, in the space can have a safe food. um, if you see the steaks of beef, or there's some fish like tuna and salmon, there are temperatures that they are cooked into, because people love their steaks medium or rare or well done. They have their own preference and choices in that. So to quickly touch that, I'll say that a
So
well.
when you say rare, well done, you are saying how much the meat is cooked, right? When it is rare, it means it's hardly cooked.
Yes,
It is when you say it is medium, that means
half cooked.
it is somewhere between rare and well done. Well done meaning again cooked.
Yes, well done meaning that the internal temperature of the meat or the fish is 72 degrees centigrade. There is medium, which is 62 degrees centigrade, and there is rare, which is 52 degrees centigrade of the internal temperature. And there are also two more stages between rare and medium to well done. It is called medium rare and medium well done. The medium rare is 5 degrees above the rare. So from 52 it's from 57. And then medium well between medium and well done is around 66 to 67, which is between 63 of the medium and 72 of the well done. This is not suggested, but still a lot of people have their steaks and fish into medium to enjoy the meat texture, because bacteria like salmonella, E. coli, listeria, staphylococcus, all these things can really make you sick. So it is always advised that you have a well cooked food. We discussed in the previous episodes that there are some raw food. Now we are discussing there are some half cooked food, but the best way to have the food is to have it well cooked.
What about sushi then? And salads? And salads.
Yes, many people say that only non-vegetarians get the bad bacteria, but I have to tell you that if there is no proper techniques involved in cleaning the lettuce, cleaning the vegetables, if there is no proper hand hygiene, if there is no proper cleanliness of your kitchen, if there are pests in your kitchen, all these things can also lead to a food illness. So it is not just limited to non-vegetarian. It might be vegetarian, non-vegetarian. A proper procedures of all these things have to be taken. How you handle the food,
Mm.
how do you pack, how do you cook, how do you cut. They're all in the process of ASAP. They're all under control.
In the newspapers, we very regularly see some tragic news. It says people in China died because they went and got mushrooms which were poisonous. Or somewhere in India, at a wedding reception, people had food that was not good. They didn't realize it, and many are dead or they're in the hospital. How do these things happen?
This is all because of poor hygiene, personal hygiene, and also poor hand hygiene. Let's say you're cooking a chicken curry. People tend to touch the raw chicken, and then without proper hand hygiene, they go and touch uh, onion and then chop the onion, and also not cooking the food for enough time or for the enough degree of temperature. Uh, let's say if someone is sick at house or around him, they should not be coming into the kitchens, because their sneeze can cause transfer of bacteria from the person to the food or the another person. People who have hepatitis should not be handling food as well, because there might be a chance of transferring hepatitis from person to food. So these are highly dangerous things to have unhygienic environment in kitchen. Especially in India, people love to have their pani puris, but how many of us are really concerned about the quality of water they use in the pani puri? People, the pani puri maker dipping his hand until elbow into the muddy water and then taking it out, and we enjoy it with so much when you have it in our mouth. But if you see that under a microscope, you would never ever again have a pani puri in your life. And then in Australia also, there was a case of so that's a chemical, that's a biological hazard. I'm saying in Australia recently we had a outbreak of needles in strawberries. Some mischief people have put needles into the strawberries, and which had ended up in the shelves of um, supermarkets, and then it had been a big chaos in the country that this mischievous things have been repeated by different people at different regions, and the strawberry farmers had to go through a lot of loss because this is not from the farmers, and few mischievous people
Yes,
have done this.
this is some malicious activity. In 2018, when I came to Australia for a lecture tour, I had the privilege of some humanist friends show me around the country. And one of them is a food technologist with a PhD in the subject. And she was explaining to me What an extraordinarily malicious thing this was, because it was aimed to destroy the industry, at least for that season.
It really affected the strawberry farmers, and the strawberry price has gone down so low, and people are really afraid of giving strawberries in the lunchbox for the kids. It's a sad thing. Finally, it's been resolved, and recently I came through a video um, in the social media that a lady was saying that chaddannam, or the leftover rice from the last night, is the best food to start for the day, or it's the best food that has got medicinal properties. I really want to clarify, this propaganda causes a great damage to the society. Rice having so much of starchiness in it, it should not be left outside whole night and then consumed in the morning. It is highly dangerous. Please refrain from doing those things. Before you follow any techniques or people, kindly check it from your end with, with a little bit of rationality in it. Buddha himself said that don't just believe things because I have said it. Just use your common sense. I just want to state the statement now here.
Indeed. I think there's a lot of myth that is there around these things. And in these YouTube days, every idiot with a camera can become an excellent expert spokesperson of any nonsense.
Yeah,
Um, I think our Italian thinker, um, the humanist friend, has said that this is the invasion of the idiots when social media creates access to just about everyone. So the responsibility now lies on the viewer to think about it, because we can't interfere unless there are criminal consequences. We can't interfere with the freedom of even those who are saying things that can be definitely untrue and sometimes damaging. But we should go back to food safety. And I was asking you about why it happens that people at large dinners suddenly take ill, or even deaths occur. And you said because of poor food hygiene.
yes, and also many people. I saw your recent post also about which nation has got bad hygiene. um, so it is also very important. There's nothing to be ashamed of here. This is really important that we have to discuss with everyone in the family that whenever you use a washroom, you have to make sure that you wash your hand properly. And there is a guide to wash your hands. It's expected that you wash at least for 20 to 30 seconds, covering all the areas on your hand, the thumbs, nails, between the fingers where the bacteria grows a lot, and then you wipe your hands with a uh, paper towel, and then the use of sanitizer. So all these measures are there in hotels and restaurants when we cook for large volume of food for many patrons a day. Uh, our utmost our utmost importance for food is food safety. If you go into cruise in large ships where people go for travel and enjoy and have a holiday, and in star hotels, the food safety, the first and foremost thing that you'll ever learn, where that's where you start, and that's more important. Basically, a line chef might be devoting his maximum number of hours on cleanliness and upkeep of the kitchen than actual cooking. That important it is for us to have a safe kitchen, a clean food. And recently, the outbreak of coronavirus is also, there is a story, or there is a version saying that it would have started from at Wuhan seafood market, where there are different meats are served or butchered. When I went to the markets of Thailand also, I did a walk around the market. The different kinds of animals that's been hung, chopped, butchered, skewered, that's being that's being sold. So the bacteria and virus that they live on humans, and animals or the birds are different. So foods, when these meats or bird meats or fish, seafood are not handled well, there is a high risk of transferring animal-based bacteria or virus into humans. If the story is likely to be correct, so this is what happened with the outbreak of coronavirus. So it is very important to have well cooked food above 72 degrees centigrade. In hotels, me as a head chef and my brigade have thermometers, laser guns to check. We have oven temperature records to see at what temperature the meats or food have been cooked. There are a lot of other processes also involved. We have a complete kitchen stewarding team to keep the upkeep of the place. So without all these people efforts and teamwork, it's not possible for us to serve that much volume of food and that hygienically.
Mm. Thank you for that insight into what happens behind the doors that we rarely have access to. But I'm thinking, look, bread, it requires yeast. When we are having curd, which most South Indians do, that has to do with bacteria. So surely not all bacteria is bad.
You rightly said, sir. Not all the bacteria is bad. There are some bacteria that makes your milk into curd. The lactobacillus bacteria is good. We spoke about the penicillium bacteria in the example of cheese. There are also probiotic yogurts and milks that's being used on a daily basis. For these are the good bacteria that you can take to help for the better digestion. So not all bacteria is bad. Our guts itself have got some thousands of bacteria in it. Uh, on a daily basis, they also help us in the digestion of our own food that we have. So not all bacteria is bad, but there are definitely a very dangerous bacteria. The swine flus or the bird flus, the coronavirus are somehow related with food. So just be careful on how you process what you eat and check what products are you getting to your house and into your mouth.
Of course. As somebody who studied microbiology, I will correct what you said just now. Um, in our guts are not just thousands of bacteria, but millions, thousands of millions.
Okay.
I mean, our gut is full of in the billions. That's the amount of bacteria that is there. But these are friendly bacteria. They help us process and digest. So there is a symbiotic relation between those bacteria and our gut, our body.
So these are flora and fauna of our own body.
Absolutely. There is bacteria on our skin.
Yes.
There is stuff in our mouth. And last episode you mentioned agar agar and a few other things.
Mm.
If we just swipe a cotton bud in our mouth or on our skin, on our fingers, and put it on agar agar, then in a few days you will see bacteria colonies develop. The problem is when we have some of the dangerous bacteria. I mean, all these problems that you mentioned to do with chicken, especially meat, that is not handled right, and then you have all this salmonella poisoning everywhere. All these are some special bacteria, dangerous special bacteria. But I'm thinking now of one more step. When I visited NASA, which you mentioned, and I did visit a few of their museums and their centers, it's an awe inspiring experience, of course. And there in the shop, for my son, I bought ice cream meant for astronauts. So, in this metal foil um, cover or packs, you find things that are solid. And then when I saw it, it says it is freeze dried. And when the astronaut wants to eat it, then they have to reconstitute it somewhat. How do they make this food for astronauts? Do you know?
You have really taken a big step from Earth to space now. Now we are talking food, food in space. So imagine the amount of effort that we put on Earth to have the food safe, and then now imagine the scale that people or NASA have to take care of the food that is prepared for astronauts in space because they're so far from the Earth, and it's very hard for them to bring back for any medical assistance. So the food has to be really safe and nutritious for them. Uh, do you know what's the first food that's ever? So we discussed about the first food that the humans cooked. Do you know what's the first cooked food that's eaten in space?
Oh, you must tell me. I've never been there.
Me neither. So the first food that's had in the space is a puree of meat and a chocolate sauce by Yuri Gagarin in year 1961. Uh, so that's a very interesting thing to know as well. So you rightly said that this food in space is very different than what we have on Earth because there are limitations over there under the zero gravity, how the food behaves, how you can eat, how the water behaves over there, and you can't even take salt and pepper in their original form. You have to take a liquid form of salt and pepper. So the salt is mixed with water, and the pepper is mixed with oil, and they are kept in bottles for as a condiments to be used. As you mentioned correctly, they all are dehydrated. They have dehydrated food. Initially, it was all like pastes in a tubes, and then solid blocks, which they can squeeze the paste into their mouth, and the solid blocks which can be which are dehydrated and can be rehydrated in space using water. They have to just leave it in with water for some time, and then the cooking happens by soaking or by hot water. And recently there are also ovens, refrigerators, and freezers that's been added to the spacecraft where you can take your fresh food from here to enjoy it for first couple of days. It's very interesting to see. If you have ever have time, please go to YouTube and see the real astronauts speaking about how they have food, and then they can't even have burger and bread because the main reason of having the salt and pepper and not having bread over there is the specks and crumbs of salt, pepper, and the bread can really make a big damage over there for the eyes of people because in zero gravity, when there is no gravity, if you spill water or a salt, it does not fall down, and in space there is no down, up, left, right. It will not go. For reference sake, I'm saying it will not go to your feet. Uh, so
So
when
how do they manage for Vastu in space? If there has no top bottom, then there should be no north, south, east, and west also in space.
there is nothing like that. It's only for a reference on Earth that we say the sun rises in east, but actually the sun is not moving. The Earth is revolving around the sun. So this Vastu is completely a nonsense. There is no science in it at all. It is a thought that made by people long, long ago. Now the science have developed and they have gone far until space, Mars, and more further away from our universe. This is real science, not Vastu, not astrology. They are.
I had to ask that, but please continue with this exciting, interesting information you're giving.
Yes, and then in many other projects like Gemini and Apollo, people started to take different kinds of food from shrimp cocktail to apple juice to butterscotch pudding, and you can not even have water just like how we have water on Earth. So you need a special technique of having a straw in a pouch, and then you suck it, and there are stoppers in the straw to stop the flow of the liquid, and then you suck the remaining water or juice or liquid that's left on the top of the straw, and you have to keep the packet aside, stuck somewhere, because if you leave a straw onto a liquid pouch, uh, the liquid will be start coming out and forming bubbles of big water, big liquid chunk bubbles, and then floating around in the spacecraft. Uh, So it's very interesting. Do you know what is the first Indian food that's, I mean, Indian favorite food that's gone into space?
Not Pani Puri.
No, it is the samosa. Even though samosa is of Middle Eastern origin, now it's an Indian favorite. It's become so much involved in our lives every day. Along with our tea, we like to have our samosa. It's an Indian version of high tea that we can say. So this was taken because Indian origin Sunita Williams, she had a favorite food that's been taken, and that is samosa. Along with this, she had also taken her own beliefs of having a small idol of Ganesha and Bhagavad Gita. That's a different story that we can talk sometime else. So now NASA has gone further that they can even get the food from the shelves of the supermarket and then send to space. But they just don't send it directly in their commercial packaging. They have to open, they have to taste, and then they have to repack them, saying by when it can be consumed and with all the details of nutrition on it. Um,
Well, actually, now that you mention these things, memory comes back. Along with the former official of the South Asian Humanist Association, Ram Gangaraju,
mhm,
uh, he kindly took me to the NASA Center in Alabama.
mhm.
I think it's called the Marshall Space Center and the Space Flight Center. Extraordinary place, and there are models of the International Space Station, Skylab, and things like that. So one can actually go in. It's a medium-sized room that you see there for the NASA astronauts, and sometimes two of those rooms are connected, and that's your International Space Station. And there are all these little ovens in which the food can be heated somewhat. Um, it's an extraordinary experience
So
to see how astronauts live in the
mm,
Space
yeah.
Center.
The food is also reheated in a special briefcases. So you plug this briefcase and then you put your food inside and leave it for a while, and the food gets warm. You said that they also do this dry freezing. The dry freezing is done by using liquid nitrogen. The liquid nitrogen boiling point is somewhere at minus 200 degrees centigrade. Am I right, sir?
Mm-hmm.
So at that low temperatures, the food gets instantly freeze. Even though if it comes in contact with your hands or fingers, it is very dangerous because it instantly freezes, and if you just snap the finger, it can go into your powder. So precautions should be
Yes.
taken. As a chefs, we work with liquid nitrogens also to make ice creams and other stuff, to make powders and things like that. And with the modern research in the space, the food what is going to space is also gone a step further by taking personal favorites. Now Chinese people are sending their kung pao chickens. Italians are sending their espresso machines over there. Of course, the mechanism will be different than what is on Earth. Commercial companies are coming forward to do those innovations. And Japanese are taking the sushis, soups, ramen, green teas over there. Koreans are taking the fermented cabbage called as kimchis over there. Russians are taking the borscht, goulash, jellies, uh, dried beef to space. Swedish are taking the
Hang on,
jerkies over there.
hang on. These guys are going for picnic then to space.
It's very important for people to have a nutritious food, and imagine that you're away from Earth, and you'll be so bored to have the same food every time. Some or other times you would like to have your flavors of your origin. So that's why NASA is also doing all these things, and also the Russian space centers also helping the astronauts to have a good nutritious food also which they can enjoy. But don't forget, the food is not in the same form what you have it over here.
Yes, but I'm thinking, why not grow food? Why just carry it from here? Because one thing is for sure, there have been some experiments by various scientists. in zero gravity atmosphere on Earth, do seeds germinate in zero gravity? And they found that they can make them germinate. So I'm just thinking, can you not make food grow in
The
space?
research has been started, as you rightly said. The germination of seeds have been observed, and then the first lettuce is also grown in space. I saw the videos of astronauts crunching the lettuce, not the cry of the plant, but crunching the fresh lettuce that's grown in the space. So these techniques, that's the experiments that done in space, can also be brought back to Earth, and maybe we can grow vegetation without the use of soil and using wastewater. So that's how the NASA is helping us. But NASA does not waste its time in finding the scientific things in Indian superstitions. That's not the job of NASA.
so so they might do hydroponics experiments in space, but they won't be looking for it in Mahabharata, you are saying.
Once these things come into existence, then there's a section of people who comes down, oh, this is already mentioned in Mahabharata or Ramayana. We have already grown it, but we don't know how it is done, and it is not there now. These claims are always there. But the first one has to start with NASA. Once NASA brings into limelight, then all these claims start. Until then, they all are
Yes,
in a sleep mode.
as I was reminding you, uh, Umberto Eco, the the Italian author, is the one who said social media has allowed the invasion of the idiots, and there's too much of that happening, I'm afraid. Talking of idiots, I was really very annoyed to see one of the most successful entrepreneurs, at least in terms of ideas, if not the economy, saying that he would like to terraform Mars.
Mhm.
You know, Mars
Yes. Uh,
has lower gravitation, and because of that, almost all the light gases have escaped Mars. The reason we have an atmosphere on Earth is that we have a good gravitational pull from the Earth. So the gases remain on the Earth. They cannot escape the gravity of the Earth. Whereas on the moon, there is no atmosphere because the moon does not have a strong gravitational force. So no gas is obliged to remain on the moon, and it's um, really escaped. So this guy was saying he might want to have a few nuclear explosions on Mars, and with a lot of complicated scientific nonsense. They then want to create an atmosphere on Mars, even if it means destroying its surface with radiological pollution, and which can remain there for a real long time. But are you aware of any attempts, not just in space, but plans, if not attempts, of growing food on Mars or on the moon?
I have a limited knowledge on that, sir. Could you please share?
There have been no attempts yet. There have been always thoughts, of course. But one of the greatest myths associated with Mars relates to agriculture on Mars. You see, there was there was an Italian scientist who looked at Mars using the telescopes of the early 1900s. And then he saw some lines on Mars. And in Italian, that's called canali.
Like a
And
hole?
some guy, canali, Canali,
Is it something like a pipe or a hole? Canal means?
a canal.
Okay, canal. Okay, yeah.
At least that was a mistake made by the translator.
Because we have a cannelloni pasta from Italy. Please go ahead.
Okay.
which looks like a
No,
like a tube.
this is not linked so much with cannelloni.
Mm.
This is more a scientist who had a limited resolution telescope, and he looked at Mars and he saw these lines which seemed to be well organized. And he called them canali, which is really like tubes or lines. It doesn't mean much. Now, some chap who is not very good at translation translated it into canals. And then the imagination factory started. They said, oh, there are canals on Mars, which means this must be irrigation canals, and they must be such giant ones that you can see them from the Earth. So there must be lots of water on Mars, lots of agriculture, and lots of people living there.
The civilization itself.
And absolutely. And then came, I think in the 1960s, on 1st of April, on the BBC, a prank news story which said the people from Mars have landed on the Earth. And some people had real heart attacks and died. There was panic all over the radio listening world, and this just caught on like wildfire. So, in people's imagination, on Mars, there has been agriculture and very successful irrigation systems and so on. In reality, of course, there's nothing like that.
That brings to me
What
also.
science, sorry,
That I'm saying that brings to my mind that I watched a movie called Martians. It's a scientific fiction movie where astronaut grows potatoes in Mars under a greenhouse. Yeah, just a thought.
yes, and of course, in a greenhouse, you can do many things. A greenhouse has its own atmosphere, is it not? That's why it is
Yeah.
called that.
Yes.
So, if you can generate enough number of gases, there's already carbon dioxide on Mars, and then you can capture it within a large balloon like thing that you can inflate once you land on Mars. And then you can have other gases, especially nitrogen and oxygen. Then you have created an atmosphere. And in that, if you can bring the warmth of the sun, let us remember on Mars there is not much sun, which
Mm.
means there is not enough sunlight to make a plant grow.
Hmm.
And you can't think that you will have a sheep farm or grow chickens there. We should remember that it's only plants which make their own food. So the one life form that we have to grow has to be plants. You can't grow animals which require other food sources.
So you said that they found, I mean, there's evidence of carbon dioxide on Mars, and because Mars does not have much gravity, there's a lot of gases that's been escaped. How about this Kujadosham? Is it still with Mars, or did it leave?
Yes, I mean, in the times when people could not explain natural phenomena or tried to understand the developments in society, they were looking for answers. And they were thinking something cosmic was influencing the affairs of humans and nature on Earth. And they assumed that Mars, which they could see with their bare eyes, was one of the causes of the bad things and the good things and so on, mostly bad. Um, of course, we know it has nothing to do with Mars. Human affairs are human affairs, and it is for us to regulate them in society through the right systems, the right approaches. And natural disasters, calamities, They're part of the physical world and the natural world, and we should know how to live with them and handle them and overcome them by human effort, not by appeasing planets far away. Some of their planets are even imaginary, that of the astrologers. And whether they have an influence or not is a matter of fact. But to think that you can utter some words in a language that nobody anymore has as a mother tongue, with some pieces of grass and some water in a copper vessel, and to think that from here you can influence the effect of Mars, which is 40 seconds, light seconds away from the Earth, is extraordinary. And yet, these people who think, I mean, the astrologers, a senior friend of mine, a great foodie himself, Professor Narendra Nayak,
Hmm.
he spells astrologers as ASS astrologers. Now, Professor Nayak is president of the Federation of Indian Rationalist Associations and has debunked a huge number of miracle claims and these fraudsters and ignorant people. Of course, if it takes 40 seconds for light to go from the Earth to Mars, how long will it take their sound to go to Mars? Because the mantras they are reciting is sound. What is the speed of sound? How long will it take to go to Mars
And then come
if you
back.
speak so loudly? And if you can speak so loudly, why are you going around with mobile phones and paying all these
Data packages.
monthly bills
Yeah.
to all these mobile phone companies? It's a load of rubbish, of course. All these claims.
Thanks, sir. That's a great
But
insight.
but coming back to this thing about probably developing sources of food for astronauts in the future planets that they're going to visit. It's an exciting challenge, is it not?
Mhm.
And one suggestion being made is you can 3D print some of these things instead of carrying them from here. If you can make use of the elements and the materials already available on Mars or on the moon. These things seem to be far-fetched, but remember 200 years ago, everything, every aspect of our life today would have seemed really far-fetched.
Great, sir. Let's move forward now.
Yes, what else do you want to tell us today about food?
So
We
we,
looked at the past of food, but
Mhm.
now we are talking about its future.
Yes, the future of food is really exciting. Personally, for me as a chef, it really creates a lot of interest that how the food from history has changed till date and how the journey of food from will be from now into the future. So there are a lot of scientists who are working on the genetical change of vegetations. So you might find in future a provitamin A bananas, where bananas does not have this vitamin A, and this was recently produced in Australia by researchers, and you can also make a cereals which are missing a particular nutrient, and this nutrient can be in the cereal as well. Starchy food like potatoes and rice, which are majorly carbohydrates, they can also have vitamin A in it. The seeds that we have on breakfast can have a boosted level of omega fats in it. the tomatoes that we eat and make curries every day, they can be made into with much antioxidants in it. Uh, so much people crying about egg being vegetarian or non-vegetarian. Now they can be eggs that's made without a need of animal. So the eggs, they're not from animals or birds, and they can be milk that is dairy free as well. So you can make a milk without the involvement of an animal. And also people who have problem with eating meats. Now the science is also looking and testing a lab grown meat, so you can directly have a burger shaped meat, or you might have a leg of a chicken probably made directly without slaughtering, without having an animal being grown. So these are the things that scope of science have in the future, and the genetical changes in vegetables can also make, let's say, you can make a blue apple, you can make a red banana, you can make a uh, different shapes of it. Have you ever heard of the square watermelons in Japan? They're not
Yes.
they're not into this genre, but just wanted to bring to notice. So this
Yes, but that is more because of the container in
yes,
which it is grown, is it
yes,
not?
yes. So
Uh,
you can
but what
shape.
you're saying is an exciting new chapter for humanity where biology is used to address the needs of humans, and they might work with genetically modified organisms, GMOs, to create special types of food. So, people who eat rice, and around the world, a huge number of people, especially of Asian origin, they eat rice. It does provide one of the four categories, major categories of food, the carbohydrates. But looking at the huge amount of vitamin A deficiency that leads to avoidable blinding of people, blindness in people, if rice were to be genetically modified to be able to have in it vitamin A, then everyone eating rice is protected from this avoidable blindness. And this is now in practice because they have created golden rice. It's called golden rice.
Mhm.
It's got beta carotene, vitamin A is in it,
Yes.
and it's slightly brownish gold color, but it's going to save your eyesight. That's a great vision for the future of humanity, that you can address human needs, probably their nutritional deficiencies, with modern techniques in biology.
So as you're talking about biology, let me also talk about chemistry in food. Uh, so in cooking, generally the procedures that we know is boiling, steaming, grilling, poaching, frying, deep frying, roasting, baking, uh, things like that. There are other ways of cooking also. There is a technique called a sous vide cooking, uh, where the water is taken in a tub, and the meats or vegetables or seafood, whatever you would like to have, they are kept in a vac pack sealed bag, and they are immersed into the water, and the water is controlled by a temperature rod. So there is a constant temperature of, let's say, 62 degrees centigrade for any meat, and it is cooked for 12 hours in the water bath. What happens with this is, when you cook a normal chicken or steak on a pan or in an oven, the heat is transformed from top to bottom, but by the time the heat goes into the middle of the chunk of the meat, the top already has got blackened or charred, or already overcooked. So to avoid this, the sous vide helps us to cook the meat evenly from from the top to the middle. So in our restaurants also, we cook a large volume of food in this. So it also keeps all the nutrients. It helps in having a better texture of meat, and it's a good way of cooking as well. It also brings to my mind that I have to tell you about the molecular gastronomy. It is a subgenre of food science which works on the physical and chemical transformations of ingredients that occur during cooking. In these techniques, you can not only sip milk, you can eat a milk, you can have oil in powder, you can have spirits of cocktails, you can have flavored airs, you can have flavored foams, you can have imitations like we spoke about caviar, but we can have caviar made up of apple juice. You can have egg yolks made up of mango puree. You can make soil look like chocolate dust by using the liquid nitrogen. You can make a thick. You can make the consistency of a liquid into thicker by using xanthan gum. You can make spherifications by using sodium alginate and calcium glucide. We have two solutions of this, and then there's a technique that if anyone is interested, please go to internet and find how these cookings are done. So these are the cookings that involve not heat but chemistry in it. It changes the physical and chemical properties of such an ingredients that we know. This is the arena where the creativity of chefs really kicks in. In my initial days, I did work on molecular gastronomy and I've really created some cool stuff. It is a play. It is like a scientific experiment. It's so interesting for any chef to look into, and also for a customer to have this experience of molecular gastronomy food is so exciting. If you ever have time, please, I request all the viewers to have a look on that. This is the modern cooking that uh, science helps us to have this experience. Uh, so
How
I
extraordinary. So suddenly the kitchen has become a playground for the knowledgeable chef.
Yes, you can work with your colors, temperatures, textures, flavors, aromas, orders that we discussed. It's really exciting. That's why it is said that food is not an art. Food is not a science. It's both art and science because it plays with your emotions. You have so many things that going around with your senses. It tickles your senses. It brings out emotions. That's why it's an art. And the things that we discussed so far, even as I said in last episode, that a boiling water transfers potato hard potato into a soft potato, and the same boiling water turns liquid egg into a hard egg. So this is the play of chemistry. This is the play of biology. This is the play of science. That is why food is a genre of food preparing is a genre of science. Is what I believe. So I'm into a profession that is both art and science. I'm so glad to be a chef.
Oh, that's a superb insight into the mind of an enlightened, progressive humanist who is now a chef. Um, I think when midway through this conversation today, you mentioned meat alternatives,
Mhm.
that you can grow meat in the laboratory. Now that solves the classic. It's not a debate that is closed because we do know that the animals we are eating are sentient beings. It is a rule of life, it is a principle of life that we have to consume other life, so to say, to be able to survive. However, if we know that we can cause less pain, the least amount of pain to an animal when we are consuming it, then that would be in tune with our principles of respect for life. But still, in the heart of every meat eater is a question: is this pain necessary? And in that context, the great debate of vegetarian non vegetarian becomes irrelevant if science is able to do enough GMO work, genetically modified organism work, and produce meat in the laboratory, in the test tube, already in parts of Europe, you can have a burger which is a meat burger, but it's not fresh off the body of an animal. It is some cells taken from an animal and grown in the lab. Maybe that's the future of that debate and of our food as well.
So soon we are finding this lab-grown meat in our supermarket stores. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Um, Certainly, in some specialty shops, you can get burgers, and they are being not in supermarket, not widely available,
Mm-hmm.
but we have some offerings. I know for sure in the UK and in the US, there are some offerings where they are called meat substitutes. They taste just like meat, except that they are not.
They're made from plant-based,
Yeah.
like the soya chunks that we have, soya nuggets, meal makers.
Much more sophisticated than soya nuggets. You can have a burger with a slab of what looks like meat but is not.
So this is also a vegan meat that generally people serve in burger joints.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
So you see, the animal instinct in us is not dead. Even those who do not want to eat meat appreciate the taste of it.
For all these problems, the solutions are only with science, and science can only give the solution, but not in Vedas, Puranas. Is what everyone has to understand.
You know what? You, in that sentence, you brought these 6 sessions of discussions to a beautiful conclusion just now. And now you laid the ground for the next and the last episode in our series of food and culture. And that is, what is there in these so called holy books and what is said by religious communities and what is sought to be regulated by authoritarian societies as far as food is concerned. And that'll be the content of the last episode of this series on food and culture. Aditya, you've been brilliant. Thank you very much for your contribution to understanding your profession, but not just your own profession, but of food, which is a fundamental aspect of our life. Thank you very much. Until the next episode.
Thank you, sir. So much we discussed from history to science. So now we are heading into nonsense, basically. I have to. The next episode is about nonsense. Uh, the I really have to thank Sri Josna Garu, Sri Nishant Garu, and Saha, Indian Humanist, and BG Group members, and we're also answering some of the questions in next coming episode. I have to thank you for your time and involvement to have a chat with me. I'm privileged. The little information, the little knowledge that I have, it's been now grown a much more bigger spectrum with your involvement and insights. That's a great time to have with you, sir. My pleasure. It's all my pleasure.
It's
Thanks
a
to
pleasure,
everyone.
my friend. It's a pleasure. And we will continue in the next episode, of course. And I join you in thanking, especially Nishant, who is spending a lot of his time making the YouTube videos presentable on our behalf. And of course, the leadership of South Asian Humanist Association and the BG Group on Facebook, uh, fb.com/group/Babu Gogineni takes people there and they can join the group and the discussion. Thank you very much, Aditya.
Thank you, sir.